Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. Delighted to be back here in Sydney a year. It's been a year since I've been back, and again, very honoured to be the first explorer to present to you today. Thank you to Stuart for everything that you do and Stuart's team. It's just fantastic conferences these. Now, I will keep to time. I've got my stopwatch here, and there's a fair amount to get through, but the title of the slide last year was Rare Investment Opportunity as well, and it's funny how a company can actually maybe grow into that first slide, because when I spoke to the RIU conference this time last year, we were talking about 280,000 tonnes of contained copper in indicated resources, open pit, and I was talking about the commencement of a drill program to really deliver a maiden resource at our underground deposit, Emmy Bluff. Well, in December last year, 5-6 months ago, just before Christmas, we put out our maiden resource, 43 million tonnes at 1.84%. Now, that's taken the total contained JORC tonnage across the tenure to 1.1 million tonnes, over 90% of which is in the indicated category. The scoping study on that work is now well advanced. You can only start the mining once you've got the resource, so it's been a very busy period. At the same time, I talked about a drill hole, which was really just a twinkle in our eyes, a deep drill hole into an IOCG target at Emmy IOCG. And I remember saying quite clearly, I got reported in the press as saying this might be the most exciting drill hole of my career to date. Well, I wasn't wrong. Exciting, challenging, it has delivered quite a lot for us, everything but sleep over the last 9 months. But again, that has given us a fantastic asset to be carrying forwards. So the rare opportunity really comes from 1.1 million tonnes of contained copper, an asset which, frankly, in a copper bull market will never not be of significant value, in my opinion. In addition to that, the upside. So we've talked about the capping of the downside. The upside is that IOCG. We're on the hunt for Australia's next world-class Tier 1 IOCG. The best place to look for one of those is right next to a whole group of intercepts, +2, +3% over 10, 20, 30, and in one case, 69 meters. And so the location is fantastic. We're in IOCG elephant country. In terms of corporate work, we have also created a clear path to the consolidation, 100% ownership of that asset. And we've also advanced our project in Queensland, Cameron River, significantly, and I'll talk about all of those in a bit more detail over the next 10 minutes or so. But fantastic locations, a strategic focus. Over the last year, we've demonstrated our ability to deliver on taking exploration, turning it into resources, and again, we're on the hunt for Australia's next major IOCG deposit. Corporate structure, still very tight, fewer than 100 million shares on issue as at today. Market cap around 60. Put that into context with 1.1 million tonnes of contained copper on the tenure. Shaw and Partners have released independent research noting a $2.50 buy target based on EV over resource comps. There's a lot of work to go still. We're working on that, on the study. But again, in terms of that market cap, you can do your own research on the EV comps. Cash over $11 million in the bank, and we formed a path to consolidation of 100% of the asset. What this means, really, JVs are a difficult place to be. I have enormous respect and, to be frank, fondness after 4 years of working together with Torrens Mining, but it made sense to put this together. No more tortuous budgeting processes, attraction for anyone looking at the project as a whole, whether it's as an acquisition or as a funding opportunity, as 100% is always better. And the end of me having to give evasive answers to every fund manager who asks us why we haven't done this yet. So we have done it. On Friday, the majority of the shares will be issued to the Torrens shareholders, issuing just over 20% of Coda to acquire 30% of our major asset. Seems like a pretty good deal to me. There will be fewer than 125 million shares on issue after the issuance of those shares over the next, the first tranche Friday, and then the rest will follow with the compulsory acquisition process. Quite certain no one can read these bios here. They're all on the ASX. But what I will say about this board, it has continued to steer the ship with good governance and making sure that the team delivers on our promises. Keith Jones, one of the most supportive chairs I imagine, on the ASX, and Colin Moorhead, who's at the conference today, who just simply goes above and beyond in the amount of time he gives to Coda, amount of time he gives to mentor myself and support the company. So if you want to have a chat about Coda, Colin will be around as well in his various guises with Xanadu and Eris and Sahayo as well. I'm not going to sit here and talk about the copper market. I'm sure there'll be a lot of presentations on this. I will simply say that the time to be building significant resources, to be building a base, is now as we move into a copper bull market, and we believe very strongly. I think there's going to be some forecasters who realize they haven't caught up with the future. There are some headwinds. I think we saw some of those with China, but the rising tide of electrification, the move towards that, is only going to create a huge demand at the same time as supply deficit. I'm a proud EV driver, and I imagine most people's next car will be one. This is going to need a lot of copper, but also for the whole gamut of that. So back to Coda. In terms of news flow, what can you expect from us over the next 12 months? I've talked about what we've achieved over the last 12 months. Well, continuation of that hunt for a major IOCG. Again, if you're looking for significant scale, if you're looking for major IOC intercepts, best place to look for them, the Gawler Craton, right next to some fantastic ore-grade intercepts. The copper cobalt study, the Zambian style, we sometimes call it. It's not in Zambia, it's in South Australia. Sedimentary copper may be a better term, but this is the 1.1 million tons, ESG friendly, in frankly the world's most forward-thinking sort of green energy jurisdiction. And that scoping study is advancing. Cowan River, another type of IOCG elephant country, fundamentally different type of IOCG, Mount Isa inlier. An area that has delivered and delivered and delivered again over the last year for some of the companies, many of which you're going to see today, companies like Carnaby, Hammer, run by fantastic people, and we'd love to see that success. Will Coda also replicate that success? Well, we've just got to drill it at this point. Appreciate this is a busy slide. It's actually quite difficult to talk to the wealth of opportunity and existing assets on this tenure. Over 700 square kilometers of tenure, now moving to 100% owned in South Australia. A mixture of early greenfield sedimentary copper exploration right up to JORC indicated resources that I've been talking about. And so there's a lot still to go on this tenure, but the main game is at ME System. This is in the north of the tenure, a sedimentary copper and IOCG, so copper cobalt and iron oxide copper gold mineralization within the same system, possibly synergistic, we don't know yet. And a bit of a headache trying to explain this to new investors. If they were 20 k's apart, you'd probably spin them out into separate companies, but they're 400 meters apart. They're almost certainly a product of the same system, and it's very hard to put together a noddy, as Colin is famous of calling it, because you sort of nod your head and go, oh yeah, I get that. And part of that is the sheer scale. The sedimentary copper is sitting there in an unconformity, so between two sandstones, and the lateral extent of this is 2.5 times the size of Centennial Park. It's bigger than Kings Park in Perth, the world's largest urban park. Beneath that 400 meters is the IOCG intercept. So this is a huge, incredibly copper-rich system, and I think that's probably the most important takeaway. We have a JORC-compliant resource, mostly indicated at Emmy Bluff, and beneath that we have a rapidly evolving exploration at the IOCG. In terms of the IOCG, this has certainly been an evolving understanding, and I think we're really starting to get a handle on this. The first intercepts last year in June 21. It feels like 2 years, but it really hasn't even been one. 200 meters of intense alteration, 50 meters of sulfides, well over the ore grades of proximal IOCGs, so above the reserve grade, well above the resource grade of IOCGs in the area. Intercepts do not make a mine yet. And we are working on expanding this. We're working on understanding this. We now believe we're chasing multiple conduits. So we're a little bit confused because we saw this classic IOCG zonation where you go from pyrite, you sort of fool's gold, to chalcopyrite, a high grade of copper mineralization, and then your bornite, the good stuff, the high grade stuff that forms the core of these deposits. What we're seeing now with a surprising intercept in ABD7 is multiple conduits, and that's backed up by independent analysis of the core. So we're really now chasing these conduits. We're up at the northern part of the tenure right now. The drill rig's about 50 meters, so just started on that hole. It'll go down to about 1,000 as we chase additional thickness. What we really see here is that within each zone, the thickness doesn't change much, but what we see is the tenor of the mineralization does. So in targeting a historical hole with much greater thickness than where else we've been looking at, we're really looking to make sure, that theory holds, and we're expecting to see a much thicker bornite-dominated intercept with EBD8. So watch this space. But some of the intercepts being returned from here, plus 3%, plus 2%, 69 meters, all well over about 1.5 overall, 1.2 and 2% within that intercept. This is really looking very good. And again, if you want to find a world-class IOCG ore body, the best place to look is right next to intercepts like this. Much of this has not been tested fully yet, so we do have work ahead of us. Zooming out a little bit, I think it'd be remiss not to mention the significant exploration potential for IOCGs across this tenure, multiple other targets. When you got a tiger by the tail, you don't go chasing other tigers in other parts of the long grass. And I guess that's what we're doing here. We're focusing on Emmy Bluff. We've got a tiger by the tail. We're really chasing that up. But there is more opportunity here as well. Back to the indicated resources, Emmy Bluff, again, 43 million tons at 1.84. We delivered that resource. That was really just the start of a drill program this time last year. And really what next? Integrating the existing open pits, the only assets I was talking about last year in terms of resources, into this new resource, finalizing a study. I've been working on metallurgy for 4 years as part of this project. We understand it. We've got a good handle on this. The underground mining study is now in the optimization phase, and we're working through that. There's a fair bit of work to do, but we are confident of delivering majority of the study in this early second half of this year. Just briefly onto Cameron River as I sort of wrap up the talk. Cameron River is another elephant country. It's a very different form of IOCG. What I love in terms of having a pipeline of assets, there's the existing JORC compliant resources. There's the fantastic upside potential of the IOCG. And then there's Cameron River. It fits in so beautifully. It's relatively shallow exploration. This isn't 800 meter IOCG. This is 80 meter kind of exploration. So it's cheap, it's relatively low risk. But as we've seen elsewhere in Queensland, this can be very high reward. These slides are a little bit wordy, so I apologize for that. It is available on the ASX. This is what happens when you let geologists loose with the slides. There's so much to talk about. It's very exciting. Simple message here. We have coincident anomalism between the IP. That shows the potential for this to go to depth. It's beneath the supergene blanket. The IP results showing that excellent rock chips and lithostructural mapping as well. Really just remains to drill this, but the IP is lighting it up beautifully. Look at some of these grades of rock chips, 26%, 20%. This is highly, highly prospective area. And we're frankly just looking forward to drilling it. That'll be August, subject to approvals, maybe a bit earlier if we can get those through. We do walk the talk on ESG. I'm very proud to sit on the Minister's Executive Committee for Energy and Resources in South Australia. This is a fantastic place to do business, and we believe very strongly in the future there. Supply chain premiums for cobalt especially, and a very strong relationship with the traditional owners, the Coda people. Very committed to ESG, also committed to finishing on time. So I will wrap up very quickly to say we have delivered over the last year. It's been a very fast-paced program. I think I've experienced everything but sleep over the last year. It's a great board. We're advancing the sediment-hosted copper with an existing resource and significant upside to come as we continue to follow up on the MEICG discovery. With that, thank you very much for your time.